Okay. Well, welcome to the Band of Brothers podcast. I'm HR Brown, and I'm here today with Alan N. Hey, Alan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks, H.
Good, good. It's good to have you on. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're pretty busy nowadays,
Yeah.
so thanks for taking the time to spend some time with us and to kind of share your story of recovery with everybody.
Yeah.
So let's just start at the beginning, bro. Tell me a little bit. Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in, if you can call it the suburbs of Montana, if that's even a thing. I think
Sure.
Montana is a suburb. Um, grew up in a small town, thousand people. The surrounding towns was about 8,000.
So where were
So
you near?
not
Bozeman, Missoula, or where were
so I
you near?
was, yep, south of Missoula,
Okay.
40 minutes south of Missoula. So right in the booger of Montana, or the butthole, however you decide to
Is
look at
that
it.
is that the Ravalli Valley?
Or Valley County.
Bitterroot
Yep,
National
that's
Forest?
homegrown right
What
there.
town are you from? Darby, Hamilton?
Pinesdale. Yep.
Yeah.
So
First
so
time I ever went to the Rocky Mountains, my brother-in-law took me to the Ravalli Valley, the Bitterroot National Forest, and we went to Tin
yeah.
Cup Lake. And I was
Okay.
like 18 and I fell in love with the Rockies. I'm like, I gotta
Yeah.
move to the Rockies someday. So
11.5 mile hike right there. I've been
you
there a
know
couple
that.
times.
It's a
Yeah.
man, I tell you, I was like 18 and then I did it at 22 or 5 and we took full 80, 90 pound packs up and stayed for, 10 days. So it was
Yeah.
so you know that hike.
Yeah. Gotta ask, did you hike up behind it into the paradise?
I did.
Did you? Okay.
I did a bunch of
Good. Because
fishing up
that's
there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the chocolate of, like, and it's all beautiful, but getting
Yeah.
up that high and being able to see, I mean, there's rolling valleys up there as
Yeah, it's
you,
beautiful. We were just
yeah.
catching fish and brought some dry food and ate fish and it was tremendous. Anyway, I'm getting off task here.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us a little bit like when did you first use? How old were you?
I was 14. 14. Yeah, you
14.
got me distracted with the
Yeah,
backpacking.
sorry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, all good. I mean, but it all encompasses all that experience kind of comes together. And I mean, I'm going through the experience of my um that's it's part of that tin cup experience led to my hopeless condition. So we'll probably end
Really?
up coming back to that part of my life. But yeah, I
Interesting.
was 14, I was 14 and in search of something, right? Didn't know what, didn't know what, nor did I know that I didn't know.
Yeah.
Um, and that it's cool to have the experience that I have today because I can look back and see the whole. I can feel the whole. I can feel the need for something else other than
Mhm.
where I currently was.
What did you
Um,
use?
Alcohol.
Do you remember the
Yeah,
feeling? Like what did it
I
do for
do.
you?
I do. Very, very well. So there was, just to to paint the picture. Lots of kids. I'm the fifth. Lots of kids. I'm the fifth down. Um, there was four. So we were down in southern Utah visiting my mother's friend. My first experience with southern Utah. Um, to put it simply, her and my dad were going through one of their many episodes of dramatic episodes, if you will. I remember that clearly. And she
Mhm.
packed us all up and went down there to visit. And that was a very common thing that was happening. Um, she had had enough and decided to pack us up and take us to southern Utah to visit her friend. Her friend had sons, and which were my distant cousins, um, and some of them had already experienced the party life, so to speak.
Hmm.
And I was already in the rebellious stages of my journey, if you will. And I was in search of anything and anywhere that was separated me from that family dynamic, which was loud. It was obnoxious. Everything annoyed me. I wasn't manageable, nor could I manage, and
Hmm.
that belief was reinforced consistently, by me and also others around me, specifically parents and older siblings. Um, and so
So what was?
my notion was to run away.
Hmm.
And so that's what took me into the setting of the outskirts of southern Utah. Um, manipulated my mom somehow, said we were going somewhere that sounded safe to her. I don't remember if she approved it or not. I went anyways, and a 21-year-old there that was there provided the alcohol, and I was just sharing with the guys today. It's like the one drink, cool. Like I'm doing it to be accepted. I'm doing it to be liked, and that was a constant need for me. So that the part of that void was being filled
Hmm.
at that point. I get a party with the cool kids, and there's big kids around me, and I'm all about it. Like we're laughing, we're playing, we're having a good time, and just that alone was a high in and of itself. I remember that. Um, and fire going, get to speak freely, get a don't have to worry about what we're talking about, what I'm laughing about, um, and felt free. So I put the first drink down, and it was disgusting, but that wasn't enough to stop. Not even like I'm accepted and liked, and this is what the cool kids do. Let's keep going.
Hmm.
One, two, and three, and three's where it happened. Three's where it happened for me. Stuff started to loosen up. The darkness became light, and the hope came. The sense of direction, sense of enabled socially. My security measures were my security meter was through the roof. Like I wasn't only accepted, and this is where I really get to experience it when I share this. Not only was I accepted, but by others around me, I accepted myself. Um, and that
So you had a
was
lot of fear, anxiety,
yeah,
lack
yeah,
of feeling part of, kind of.
yeah, yeah. That was a foreign concept to me to feel a part of. Didn't
Okay.
matter where I was, who I was with. The loneliness was constant for me,
Yeah.
um, and to feel that social security and everything that I was promised growing up, if I would just live their religious beliefs, if I would just live by the principles that they were trying to teach me, I would feel the way that I felt that was provided by alcohol.
Right.
Um, and I remember thinking that specifically. So this is what it's all about. If I just have this available, readily available, I can do everything I'm asked and
Yep.
be just fine.
Found the solution.
Yeah, yep.
So how did that progress?
So in the I sought it out um, immediately. It took
Okay.
some navigating. Came back to Montana. Came back to Montana after that so-called vacation, and it was on. It was it was on. Like I told my friends like this is like alcohol is it's incredible.
Hmm.
Beer is
So you like a
incredible. Like the
freshman.
yeah, freshman in high school. So it was the summer between eighth and ninth grade. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. So came back, and that summer specifically, my cousins who were 5, 6 years older than me were they made microbrews, and
Mm. Oh wow.
yeah, somehow I got my way into a couple boxes of those. Dug a hole in the back in my backyard and had beer back there stashed. It was the nastiest. Still remember the taste. It was the nastiest experiment you could ever imagine. But it did the job, right? Um, ended up getting caught by some. We snuck out one night with some girls, um, and me and a couple buddies snuck out one night with some girls, and we were drinking, and some individuals that were, you know, the priesthood holders, the goody two shoes. They were walking in the middle of the night doing whatever, and they saw us and turned us into the bishopric, right? So we were questioned and questioned and questioned, investigated. It was this big old ordeal. The news spread like wildfire. I was the supplier. I was the bad influence. Friends, mothers exiled me from their homes.
Wow.
Um,
So how big of a
and
town is this?
1,000 people. So
Yeah.
I was raised in the fundamental LDS church.
Oh, you were.
Yeah, yeah, multiple wives. Everybody had them, and
Yeah.
that was my normal. And yeah, so it was a community with that culture.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
so if you're religious, if you weren't religious or practicing religious principles publicly all the time and socially accepted, you were essentially outcasted. And if you were a person, this is my mindset then, if you were somebody's as I was, who had nowhere else to go and had no other choices but to just figure out how to navigate um, through this socially unaccepted, I completely socially unaccepted, um, and figuring out how to navigate through that just reinforced the behaviors for me. It
Yeah.
might have delayed it a little bit. There was
Yeah.
disciplinary tactics, and you can't go to church for this amount of time. You're no longer have the priesthood. Things like components to reinforce the shame, but I didn't know that was happening.
Right.
Maybe, and I don't know if they knew that they were doing it. Not really my business today, but regardless, the reinforced belief systems of I am, no matter what I do, I'm not going to be accepted by these guys anyway. So I'll just give them what they want so I can survive
Yeah.
socially. Um, and that, as far as to go to your question, the progressive look. So my perspective then was, how can I navigate? There was questions is how can I navigate through this? How can I satisfy my superiors to a point of sustainability? And at that point, I remember this being a tactic that I was using. Once I get to a baseline of um, once I get myself to a baseline of um, acceptance, or I'm not in the spotlight, I then can um, start my outreach for filling that void again with substance
Gotcha.
or alcohol.
Yeah,
I
because
I remember
you'd found a
having,
solution, right? I mean,
yeah,
like it worked.
yeah, yep, and I was willing to do the work to get back to it.
Yeah.
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 So
Interesting.
yeah, so at that point I ended up back down in southern Utah at the end of that summer for about a week. Um, and my older brother lived down there, and he had friends or past friends. He had straightened his life up completely. Like he had somewhat of the past, like I was starting anyways. He had some past friends that I hooked up with my cousins down there, and um, got introduced to weed. And that was another one. I immediately, it was more the lifestyle, again, it was a social thing for me that I was very attracted to. I,
Mm-hmm.
I again brought that back to Montana, same cycle, but I was a little more careful this time, right? Like, um, ended up gravitating toward a few others in the community that I had no idea used it. They found
Mm-hmm.
out I used it, and we intermingled and became best friends. Um, and that became a lifestyle. In fact, more so than the alcohol did. I was involved in the evening parties. Got found some individuals to consistently buy alcohol for us, but it was more the lifestyle of smoking weed every day that um, introduced was introduced very quickly, because that
Mm-hmm.
that that gave me a level playing field. I could hide it better. I could operate socially. It didn't smell, and as you said, it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was my medication. Weed and alcohol.
So you,
And
you you get out of high school, what happens?
so that went on through high school. Few pills here and there, but couldn't really find them, and what I had worked. So um, moved out of high school. I went over to. I had another distant cousin that invited me to go over to Baltimore, Maryland, to remodel hotels, and this was actually before I was 18. I So let me back up a little bit. So when I was 14, also my parents were actually hit by a drunk driver,
Mm.
and nearly killed both of them with my brand new baby brother, and um, that that ripple effect was quite painful,
Mm-hmm.
to more for the rest of my family than me, like, and this still hurts me to share this, but as that so I'm in these manipulation tactics, as I mentioned earlier, of
Mm-hmm.
getting to that level, of that baseline of trust, so I can then use my solutions. But at the point of at the point of this accident, I immediately was relieved that I can now go do whatever I want, and they
Mm-hmm.
have enough going on. They don't need to worry about me. That cycle went on until I was 16. Um, my mother was, her hip was shattered back. Something was wrong with her neck. She was in a wheelchair for 3 years. Had to remodel the
Wow.
home. My dad's chest was caved in, things like that. So there was a recovery process that was um, very evident and apparent. A lot of community support there. Anyways, I was invisible, and I was all about it. Like, I remember feeling that relief. Like, they have enough going on.
Right.
Um, just so selfish. Just and on top of that, where they did have time to have conversations with me about my behaviors and my drinking and partying. They we were hit by a drunk driver, right? Like, and what did that do? That just reinforced what I was already running away from, or
Sure.
utilizing to justify the shame and the guilt that I already felt that I didn't want to feel. But so I moved away. I moved away at 16. After my mom was done with that cycle, I made her life a living hell. I'll be honest and say that I did it on purpose. I knew what I was doing. I knew that if I put her in enough pain, that she would just see fit for me to just leave. Um, so at the appropriate time,
Where'd you
I
go?
said this. So over to Baltimore, Maryland, to remodel
Oh, that
hotels.
okay.
Yep, at 16 years old, I had a job building houses, and got this offer to go over and just gypsy status, essentially. Um, and I was attracted to it because it was anywhere but here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's so many irresponsible behaviors at that point. Parents didn't want their kids around me. I was hanging out with all the potheads, a lot of druggies at that point, druggies on quote. Um, but I
At, in
wasn't doing
Baltimore,
that.
in Maryland?
So prior to
Yeah.
moving, like that was the culture I was attracted to. And then I went over
Yeah.
to Baltimore and worked constantly, and alcohol was readily available. It's like I look at it and it's so simple that all I had to do was go to work. I made the money that I was making $8 an hour. I was at work. I was with who accepted me. All I had to do was work hard to get accepted. And then
Mhm.
I had alcohol readily available on the weekends. Um, and on the one day off that I had it readily available, and weed too, because it was readily available all around the
Mhm.
streets over there. So moved from there. I traveled from there to Virginia, to Dallas, to Austin, went down to Mexico for
With
a
the
couple
same
months
crew,
around
just
that.
building
Yep.
and working.
Yeah, building, doing random hotels, building houses, and there was some healthy influences within that small traveling culture that we had, but there was also unhealthy influences, and for obvious reasons, I gravitated toward the unhealthy. A lot of parties, Juarez, Mexico, hookers, and I'm 18 at this point. This cycle went on for a couple of years. I'm just shy of 18 when I went to Juarez and partied for days. The hookers, the drug dealers, um, a lot of, but I was only into weed, and I think I did some coke. Um, but I was just weed and alcohol, and again, those still worked for me. I
Mhm.
wasn't really I didn't know to gravitate to anything because I didn't need more. Otherwise, I mean, it was doing the job. So
Right.
um, went down to Mexico after Juarez, was down there for 2 months, and that's when I hit the coke. And that was when I started to need a little bit more. I remember that specifically. Um, but couldn't find it, didn't have access to it. So let that one go. Um, So backing up, I used meth when I was 16 one time with the same influences that were with the same individuals that I had in southern Utah. I used
Mhm.
that one time, and that did the job for me. And but as I went onward in my travels, I didn't have access to it, nor did I know how to find it. Um, but I always craved it. I always just settled for the alcohol and weed and that party lifestyle, and that was enough for me. I always had meth on my mind. Like, I wanted to use it. I will when it becomes available. And um yeah, came back home when I was 18,
Mhm.
and I
So back
got
to Montana.
Yep, back to Montana. Had enough of that life. My friends from home, everything had settled down at home. Like, of course, I had the status, but I was a grown ass man now, and I can make my own decisions. And I had money saved, and
Right.
um, my life was manageable. Manageable. I had resources, plus I had somewhere to go if it got bad. I had a backup plan. That was my
Mhm.
best thinking at that point. Went home, moved back in with my parents because I remember specifically having this sob, like, I want to come back and make it right and start my life over and make good choices.
Mhm.
uh, and my mom bought it. She's my mom. She loves me, and she wants the best for me. And if I'm making these commitments, she's gonna give me the benefit of the doubt. That was my mindset, and sure as shit, there I was. Back with the same friends. They were more experienced in the party lifestyle. Um, they had jobs, they went to work consistently, but we all had our money now, and our jobs, and we were able to pull together and make sure that we had a consistent flow of weed. And then we started dealing together into the outside community, because that culture, they just adopted me to the, the available culture that they had built while I was gone. I was
Right.
all about that. You know, old high school friends that I didn't know were involved in it. You know, reconnection, that social acceptance, like took me a long way. Like
Hmm.
anywhere I could be socially accepted, and I trusted. I had security in that I could be accepted in the weed culture.
Hmm.
You know, grew my hair out, was snowboarding all the time, basically a ski bum um, during the winter and backpacking during the summer. And there was full access to all of that all the time. All I had to do was go to work and make money, and that way I could be invisible. I don't really care what the community says at that point. Um,
So interest,
and
why would you go back to live there if you had money? Just because it was free and it was just secure, or
so social acceptance, my buddies talked me into coming back. We miss you. We
oh,
want you home. We've got
gotcha.
you know, we've got all the weed you want. Like we're partying, you know. And I remember him saying, when appropriate, we're partying. It's like, yeah, I knew what that meant. Like, let's go. Like, and plus
Hmm.
I loved home. I loved Montana. I wasn't into the city life really. It was fun while it lasted, but I was more attracted to my old friends at home
Hmm.
and the girls at home. And um I went back, and it wasn't 2 3 months I got a girl pregnant, my first wife actually. Um and we then, you know, we were dating for like a month. Like I remember the months and the days of the year, like specifically. It's wild.
Hmm.
um but we were dating, she got pregnant. um and I told my parents, and they were devastated. It's just the look of devastation over their faces when I told them. And I remember my dad asking me, so what are you gonna do? And I knew where he was going. I knew that I already knew the answer, what was in his head, and my aim um was to please him.
Get married,
um
huh?
yep.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we did. So she was 16, and I was just turned 18, and we got married. It was the whole deal. Like there was my parents were doing the best they can to support that movement and that choice. And I said all kinds of you know, I dropped all kinds of commitment phrases, like I'm gonna do better, like I can repent from this. Like that was the language, just that. But I was so full of shame and
Hmm.
lack of acceptance of myself, and I was going to hell. Like there was no turning back from this. But I had values that influenced the decision for my daughter anyways, not necessarily for me. um
Right.
like I could manage. So basically I lived two separate lives at that point. I could manage and party, maybe not as much, but party and smoke weed um when appropriate, unquote. And I can also raise this kid as long as I'm working and paying the bills. We got a place, you know, got our own phone. We had one vehicle, um, and I was hanging drywall,
Okay.
and I was damn good at it. And but also what was accepted while doing that was drinking and smoking weed. So worked for me. Like, cool,
Hmm.
I can do this. This will work. This will work. And so Kylie, my oldest, who is now just about to turn 18 in January. Um, she she was born in January of 2004, and 2005, January of 2005, and um, navigated through that process until that wasn't enough, and I was invited down to move down to Salt Lake and live with my brother, continue hanging drywall, for more money is how I justified it. I left my
Mhm.
wife, my daughter, moved down there, and I was free. I was That was my pattern at that point is I ran when things got too hard, and I
Mhm.
justified, and the reasoning was the grass is greener. The grass is
So
greener
did
on
you
the
get
other side.
divorced or did you just kind of separate?
So separated at that. No, we it was so she cheated on me, and she cheated on me with my best friend. I found out about that and just went into the deepest depths of alcoholism a 19-year-old kid could. Um, and that was, and the reason I share that, because that's from my perspective, that was my goal. I'm going to show them, I'm going to show her how much she hurt me by drinking myself, maybe like best case to death. Like that was my
Right.
mindset is drinking at night, working during the day, framing houses. Um, and little did she know, and nobody knew for a long time, but I cheated on her, and I didn't want to look at that though, right?
Right.
So I cheated on her with her friend, but I held off on that news until I wanted to hurt her for cheating on me. And like year later or something, I came out one day and told her I need to do the next right thing and tell you tell you something. But I was being devious in that I wanted to turn those two against each other, um,
Hmm.
and it empowered me. Things like that, like the manipulation and yeah, it makes I still feel it when I share that how devious I was in nature and manipulative and selfish, and in the in inside of all of this there is there's my 2-year-old daughter, 2-year-old daughter that is going to grow up without a dad, that isn't going to act, loves her to death, but isn't going to act like it, is going to care more about himself and his and satisfying his needs than me. And um, but where I was, I knew all of this was happening. Um, I knew all of this was happening, but I had to take care of my feelings. That was my
Hmm.
priority. Like making sure that the problem that I had that nobody else had and nobody could help with was taken care of, and I trusted my solutions, which was alcohol, weed, pills. At that, it had escalated, it had progressed to pills at that point, um, on and off because they weren't fully accessible. Um, but so that
Like
cycle,
painkillers, opioids?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, hydrocodone specifically.
Okay.
Um, that cycle continued. Um, that was the not really the birth of my alcoholism, but that was where I found the baseline of I need to drink this much to make sure that I can maintain.
Right.
And that cycle went on for until 21, 22 when I moved back up to Montana. Um, moved back up to Montana to work had picked back up, and I was hanging drywall with the same guys, couple additions to the friend culture. We still had the same friend culture. And I was we had adopted a couple others that was could drink like me, right? And so that worked out really well as far as I was concerned. Um, Drinking, camping, backpacking and drinking. It's like a lot of psychedelics, lot of pills along with it. And yeah, like psychedelics for those 2 summers, it was about every other weekend. Um, Raves, ecstasy, um, but alcohol was my baseline. That was my chocolate. That was what I needed to maintain. But the social acceptance, the planning of all of that, like that's what my life was regulated by, um, was managing and making all of that happen. and work, so I could sustain and make money. And all of the funds coming in was going to um, supporting me and that lifestyle. And
Right.
it just demoralized me consistently. And looking back now with my perspective now, um, I observe in that mindset that I knew it was happening. I knew I was going morally bankrupt. I knew I was essentially fucking over anything important that I truly cared about and
Mhm.
or was responsible for, specifically my daughter and and her mother, because I still felt responsibility to her, and but I didn't have the like what was more important was making sure that I was taken care of, and that exhausted all my resources. Um, Not to mention, I had a status that I needed to uphold socially, and I had to make it look like I had money all the time. So I'd supply the alcohol, I would supply the psychedelics, I had the hookups, um, I had the party spots, I had the ambitions to plan it all. That was my rap, and I
Mhm.
had to keep that. That was a drug in and of itself. That was
Mhm.
also part of my solution. Um,
So what
but
happened? Tell me about what got you into recovery? What was the
yeah,
proverbial bottom, the proverbial moment of clarity? What so I'm assuming the
yeah.
next 5, 6, 10 years you were just running and gunning.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
escalated to that point. It was a lot of pills, a lot of dealing, a lot of the same lifestyle that I just mentioned. Um, Progressed to so I got another girl pregnant who was my second wife, right?
Mhm.
At the age of 20, well, 12 years ago. So I was 26.
Okay.
Um, I was 26, so that was 3 4 years of that cycle. Met this girl at a party at a friend's house, got her pregnant. We started dating. Same exact cycle. Just revolved the same exact way. Um,
Mhm.
and my second daughter was born. Ended up marrying her. Um, 3 4 years. So married her in 2015. So within this dynamic, it was the same exact mirrored what I already shared. Like I had the responsibility, I needed to take care of her, same
Mhm.
cycle. Needed the lifestyle to come along with it, or you don't get me, basically. I even
Right.
told her that. Um, so 20, right when Alice, my youngest, was born, 26. Um, I was a pillhead at that point. Like I had to have my pills. It was of the highest priority. Percocet was my favorite.
Mhm.
Mother-in-law, ex-mother-in-law. I was actually living with her, um, and
Wow.
working at a call center, selling magazines, and I was a supervisor at that place. As it turned out, I was pretty good at it in my own head, and I also got my social status there, and that aligned with the securities outside of there that I had developed over the years. So
Mhm.
it all like my plan was working great, right? Um, and I lived, I moved in with my mother-in-law, mooching off her essentially. Don't even think I was paying rent. And um, she had an injury that provided her endless amounts of pills, and I knew where they were locked up. Um, Helped myself to those by
Mhm.
breaking in, picking the lock, et cetera, et cetera. That process went on for about 6 months until one day she went to refill her pill bottles or look at them or something and saw that they were gone, called the cops, investigation happened. Detective called me. I went in, talked to the detective, and I knew I was hit. So I just admitted to everything. Boom. I was like,
Mhm.
okay, cool. First felony. Um, and within that amount of time, when that investigation was happening, I ran off to North Dakota to pour concrete. Same cycle again. Like, grass is greener over there. I'm gonna go make
Mhm.
money. I'm gonna get out of this lifestyle. You know, it was a
Geographic
life.
change will help,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It was necessary.
Yeah, the bummer is we just keep following ourselves. So those
Yeah,
those geographic changes don't work so
yeah.
well.
Where I was, there I was, and
Yeah.
so went over there, and that's where I found meth again. And mixed with pills, and I was all about that. Um, Thing is I actually had an accident and broke my leg, and I actually shattered my broke my tibia and fibia, spiral fracture, 7 spots. While I was drunk playing poker one night, slipped on the ice, an ice patch, and just tripped. I was super fucked up, but I was in the maintenance stages of my alcoholism. I was super um intoxicated, but I didn't really think that I was. Plus I had painkillers
Mhm.
in me already. Um went and got surgery. That was an 8-month long wheelchair ride.
Mm.
Um and I moved back home with my wife, who had my 2-year-old daughter. Um my 6-year-old at that time was basically history, um, as far as me being able to take care of her. But I moved back home with my wife and back to Montana, and we um, and that's where my first um, inclination, or that's when I had my first revelation, like, I'm fucked up. I Unless I die, or go to prison or jail, like, this is not going to change. I remember
Mhm.
that revelation specifically because I now had access to meth, a currency of full access to painkillers, the lauded Oxycontin that I could trade for my new drug of choice, which was meth mixed with alcohol. Right,
Mhm.
had to have those mixed. So that was the point that had progressed to at that point when I was just bedridden, and that was the greatest excuse ever because everybody would co-sign that bullshit, right?
Right.
I couldn't get up, I couldn't do anything. Everybody needs to take care of me. Um, I need money. I'm calling out to churches to get support financially, and I had the best story. Um, just trying to take care, and it was during the recession too. I remember that as a manipulative tactic. Like, that's why I had to go to North Dakota because I was out of
Mhm.
work here. On and on and on. Just these sob stories that the and I knew the church community so well because I was raised in it. I knew that they would conform, and
Right.
so they did, and so I was taken care of, and I had currency, and I had valid currency for the meth, and also money if I had to have it. So that cycle, my leg finally healed up. I went back to work, um, and so it was back to my first felony. They did that investigation prior to me breaking my leg. Little did I know I had a warrant out this whole time.
Mhm.
um and so while my leg was broken, I was out in a drunk rampage with a couple friends, with leg in cast, couldn't walk, got pulled over. That warrant was exposed, and I went to jail. um got bailed out there, and was walking through the court system for the very first time. They offered me a plea deal, 3-year deferred. I was in the mindset of catch me, and I ran off to North Dakota. Um, Communicated with lawyer a couple times, kept trying to talk me into coming back. Catch me, catch me if you
Mhm.
can. Like, knocking, yeah. Good luck. Um, May of 2013, I went to jail in North Dakota, got extradited. I mean, full drug use, complete psychosis at this point, mind you. Pouring concrete, trying to pour concrete, trying to stay socially accepted. Everybody had pushed me away at that point. Like, I was abruptly in a hopeless condition in the middle of North Dakota. Everybody knew I was on drugs. I was getting fired from my job already. Um, and I got arrested finally, on a drug pickup from a dude that lived in the house. The cops showed up, they ran my name, boom. Um, and I got extradited back to Montana to face that. I sat in jail for 4 months that time. 2 months into it, I heard of these AA dudes came into
Mhm.
these AA dudes came into the county jail, and they introduced the message of recovery. And
Wow.
I immediately, this is what I felt. I'm not going to call it hope. I'm not going to call it hope, but I felt a connection outside of my design, which
Mhm.
that social security was still such a need and
Mhm.
an addiction for me. If I'm coming in and they're sharing experience, just like my I call it my step one experience today. They're sharing their experience, strength, and hope, and it's aligning with my powerlessness, my unmanageability.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm connecting with them on that level, and I'm like, oh, but these guys are sober. They're 11, and I remember specifically 11 and 13 years sober. And I'm like, what the like bullshit? They're not alcoholic, like not a chance. So they're not pillheads, and they're not meth heads, just
Mhm.
like I am. I was all three at that point.
Mhm.
Um, but they had the same story as me. So I'm like, some components matched up. So I believed them.
Mhm.
And they um, there was a organization in the county jail that introduced a option for treatment if I could get a eval done. Got that eval through this program, and off to treatment I went, and that was where the solution was introduced, the language of the solution anyway. That's where I was introduced to recovery the first time, was in 2013.
Okay.
um and that's essentially like JH. That's where my real step one experience like
Yeah.
started, coupled with the substance and the behaviors, the manipulation, trying to get my life back together with somebody else's design, but in
Yeah.
fact was using their way to manipulate back into what I knew worked. I didn't have
Mhm.
any faith in the program at that point. I saw it work for others, but not me.
Mhm.
It doesn't work for everybody. Like, got 9 months once, back to jail. So I was on probation. I ended up getting sentenced, for 8 years for that stunt that I pulled. Um, and I did well in treatment and got sentenced to 8 years probation. Um, and went through a recovery stint of about 9 months and broke my foot. Got on tramadol. Was all about that. That worked really well for me for a little while, and then I all of a sudden had an uncontrollable, um, uh, an uncontrollable, like unmanageable form of ADD, right?
Mhm.
That I had to go into the doctor to get that checked out.
Mhm.
Um, because someone told me I could get Adderall if I did that, and I
Yeah.
knew I had ADD because I was reinforced growing up. My mom told me I had this. So those pieces came together, and I went in and got a prescription to Adderall, and they started me out on 10 milligrams, and went back in and said, this isn't working. This isn't working. They gave me 20s and did same story. 3 months later, they gave me 30s twice a day, and that worked mixed with the tramadol that I was continuously getting a prescription for.
Mhm.
Probation co-signed it, right? Oh yeah, they did, because it was prescription. Still going to meetings, mind you, still going to meetings because I had a status I needed to to uphold,
Right.
with the community that and the wife too. Um, I had to program to be accepted by her, um, and um, just that Yeah, the status, man. Like that went on until I was not so probation stopped UAing me except every 3 months. And right at that point it was on. Like I was like, okay, I know where I can get meth now. Introduced myself to the dark web and had full readily available access to meth. When my probation meetings came up, I was just clean for 3 days prior to going in there, went in and pissed clean and went back to it. That cycle went on for until I got caught a couple of times, 3 times through that process, got sanctioned each time, some county jail stints in there, moved on. Let's see. That's sanctions, couple months of jail, new charges twice in that cycle, and was resentenced to probation with treatment through that part. And that was from like that was 2015 to 2018. I had done treatment
Mm-hmm.
2 times, outpatient and one inpatient, and um, and then with some sanctions, some um, intensive probation supervision is what they called it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Went through that cycle for until 2017 with some stints of recovery, and so 2017 hit the same like probation. At that point it felt like they were giving me enough rope to hang myself. They started UAing me. I kept being low risk to reoffend for some reason. That never made sense to me, but I was all about it, right? Because then I only had to pee at the very most once a month.
Right.
2018 I was on the 3 months, and I was so fucked up, completely outside of my head. I'd been using almost for a year straight, getting away with UAs, diluting my piss, finding ways to passing everyone. Just I had the status. I had the status to sell probation on. Like I didn't look like a drug addict in my mind. Like I had a family, I had a nice home, I
Mm-hmm.
had cars, I had my driver's license, so I hadn't gotten that bad yet. Um, And so probation, I guess, just didn't get suspicious until one day I got called in for erratic driving. Got pulled over, had a half ounce of dope on me. I was currently on probation, and this would be the third new charges that I had while on probation. And they're just like, "Fuck you, dude! Like you are not." Like I remember my probation officer telling me, "Like you're not getting out. Like we're locking you up." Um, I got pulled over and in my home. So my wife always gave me the benefit of the doubt. She's super codependent, super manipulatable. And I knew it. She kept buying my bullshit. Every story I had, she just believed it to the best of her ability and went on
Mm-hmm.
her way and managed the best she could. She was super responsible. She had a car, she had a vehicle, knew how to save money. Um, I and I manipulated those. Like I used her as a channel, or a just as a status, um, a chess piece, if you will, pawn, uh, to keep that status. Like probation would call her, "How's he doing?" She'd say he's doing well. Anyways, through this process, I was dealing dope because I was using the dark web, so I had it readily available. I had my own culture out in the Bozeman, Montana community. This is where we were living, is in Bozeman,
Mm-hmm.
Montana. Um, and so as this happened, we got evicted from our home that we were renting. Um, I lost my vehicle. Um, I had endless amounts needles, of scales, baggies, you like drug use equipment, throughout, because meth was my thing. I was cured of everything. I was fine with just meth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and all of that evidence was in my home, and she found it all as they were moving out. Um, and I was in jail detoxing, off of pills and meth while all of this was happening. And I was cured, man. I was cured at that point. Like I was like, I will never use again. I am so done. I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna earn her back. I'm gonna I'm gonna build her trust back. Same mindset, right? I'm in the
Yeah.
same thought process. If I just get out and do the next right thing, I can earn her trust back. Fuck no, man. Last conversation I had with her, it was in jail, and she told me to fuck off, basically. Like there's not going to be any other chance for you. You're never seeing your daughter again. Um, on and on and on. And that those, those I was hit. I was done. Um, I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to use anymore, but I certainly didn't want to live. There was nothing to hope for. I had screwed over everything, anything that I touched, and full of shame and guilt. And but I had to get out of jail, right? So again,
Mm-hmm.
the same a program was offered. I applied for it and was able to go to another treatment, a 90-day program in Billings, Montana. Um, 90-day inpatient men's program. So it's kind of similar to the ranch, except state funded. It wasn't oriented within spiritual principles. It was all it was by the book treatment. Um, thinking errors, CBT, DBT, day in, day out, with introducing me to the recovery culture in the outside community slowly. Um, but my life was burned to the ground at that point, and so I just aimed to rebuild it. Got some hope throughout the process. Kept trying to reach out to Candace, is her name, um, but she wasn't having it. But I just kept on going because again, I was socially accepted pretty quickly. Every direction that I went,
Mm-hmm.
in life, I was socially accepted pretty quickly, and that was enough to sustain in recovery, especially the AANA community. I roasted myself with meetings, man, 2, 3 a day for
Mm-hmm.
about 5 months. Um, Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Learned the language, learned how to share, learned how to be accepted by how good my share was. Like just feeding, just feeding what my needs. And I remember thinking like,
You sound like you were a pretty good chameleon.
yeah,
You
yeah.
could wherever you were, you could kind of merge and meld and
Hmm.
do what you needed to do to find acceptance and be part
Yeah,
of.
the tactic is just validate everybody, like just
Mhm.
validate them, and they'll accept you. That was my just
Yeah.
validate him. Like she'll like or he'll like you. Validate her, she'll like you. Um, Talk a little shit here, talk a little shit there.
So
Um,
let's get to the solution.
yeah, let's do that. That sounds good.
Tell me about the last what got you into the ranch.
Okay. Yep. So that's actually what this is coming up on. So through that recovery stand out that outside that treatment center, that 90-day men's program, um, I got out of that, was so ingrained in meetings. I lived in that culture for a while. Brother-in-law offered me a job to come down to Utah to frame for him while I was in recovery, and I was a good framer. He offered me great money to come down there. Got involved in that, separated from the herd, so to speak, right? Stopped
Hmm.
going to meetings. Never worked steps. I got to the fourth step and ran away from it. Fuck that. Um, and got to Utah in August of 2019. I relapsed November 19th, 2019, and I used heroin and meth, um, until I lived with my sisters and, secretly used in their home, living off the dark web and going to work every day for my brother-in-law, making more money I've ever made before, supporting my habit that lasted until I was caught on July 11th of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, it was July 3rd of 2020. I interviewed with Brian Heaton on July 11th, and ended up in the ranch in July 20th of 2020.
So
So
tell me about that experience. What was your experience with the men you were in treatment with?
so so I came in again just full of shame, hopelessness, darkness. Um, there if there was a solution, it wasn't for me. I had fucked everything up. Anything I touched, there was no way I was gonna come out of it in any different mindset than I was already in. And what I was of my own creation. That if I didn't have any awareness, I had that coming into the range. Um, Went through the detox process. I came in on a Sunday, and I'll never
Mm-hmm.
forget my first alumni. I gave him the finger. I came in super hostile, came in super resistant, but knew I had to be there because I was out. Like I knew the recovery process worked for others, but it never worked for me long term. Um,
Right.
but I was out of ideas. Like I was like, my hands are up. Like I fucking, it's over for me. Um, so whatever you guys got, like I guess I'll just do it or I'm dead. Best case. That was my mindset. Went to my first alumni, and um, it was just like the first time I shared that was introduced to the AA program. Like they were telling my story that I was in real time from the
Mm-hmm.
pulpit with 90 days, 6 months, 9 months, 9 years. TJ Johnson, Mark Campbell. These guys were sharing in a place that I was like, they're sharing where I'm at now, and they're telling me it's for me. Um, and I guess I'm just gonna stay here with these guys and um, acclimate to what they have going on. I was introduced to the TC culture very abruptly because of how hostile I was. Um, and I wasn't having any control. Nobody was going to be telling me what to do or telling on me without hearing it from me. And um, just the brotherhood, like there was enough cultured men in my group that they, one of them runs our recovery coach team. One of them runs outpatient in Utah now. Um, but I was in house with them, and they saw what was going on, and they called that shit out in my
Mm-hmm.
very first TC. I stood up. I was like, "What the fuck did you say to me?" I remember that. I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" They're like, they're like that behavior, right? That right there, it's not welcome here. Either sit the fuck down or get the fuck out of here. And that's actually when I stood up. Is when I heard that I stood up. Um, And as I stood up, Davis Milton said, I'm right. Sit the fuck down and stay. I think he said stay. Something to just like blast me with the like, you're welcome here, but not that behavior. I saw that like at that spot, I had the visual of my ego and what they were trying to what they were trying to reveal.
Yeah.
Um, and so I saw the two individuals in myself at that point, and he was right. I had to sit down, otherwise where am I going? Like I already knew. I had my car in the parking lot, right? So and so that the cycle, the same mindset went on for, dude, I wasn't giving up easy. I skipped my step one because I was going through too hard of a detox. Nobody had detox like I had it. um, Trying to manipulate. Nobody was buying it. Felt alone. A lot of self pity. Kept getting that called out. But with all of this, I had the suggestion from Brian Heaton when I went to him one of my 25 times that I went to check in with him so he could save me. Um, but he said, he's like, you're not talking to me again, but I'm going to give you one suggestion. He said, take the suggestions. Keep it simple. And I promise you your perspective is going to change if you keep doing that. You can fill however you want. Don't hit anybody. We can handle the rest. Let's go. And I heard that, man. I heard that. And so I started doing my PIs consistently. Um, I started looking for individuals to call out, and I started taking a look at the shit that I was getting called out on. I started acclimating with the chores culture, with the chores teams, little acts of service because it was suggested in alumni, do it in secret here and there. Fuck, I don't want to do that, but all ego still at that point, but I was told to experiment with it, so I did it. And through that process, I did a step one, and Jimmy Jagger fucked me up in my step one. I went and packed my shit after my step one, called me God, told me I was playing God, told me to look at the results of my best ideas. That's the first time I'd ever heard that. That was my best thinking that got me in not only the mindset I'm in, but got me the results that were evident in my life. That was all me, and the picture was painted so clearly. It was clear as day, and I wasn't equipped to handle that. And I again had a solution to take care of that. So I went and packed my shit, and one of the staff came up, and it's actually no, he didn't come up, and it was actually Drew Etchell. Because I before I was about to leave, I asked him, I was like, dude, do you have anything to say to keep me here? And he asked me this. He asked me, I don't really have anything to say to keep you here, but I will ask you this as a brother. I will ask you this question. So what's out? And it was post step one. So I saw it. I saw this truth. He said, what's out there that's not going to lead you to more pain than you're already
Mm.
in here? And I heard that. I'm like, fuck you. I told him that. I said, fuck you, dude. Um, and elaboration on that a little bit. And anyways, I stayed, and I kept doing the deal, taking suggestions, getting called out because my behaviors didn't just abruptly change. Like I was taking the small action steps that were provided by the guidelines. Um, but I wasn't really seeing it except through the process of the steps that was provided in the assignments, the why am I really in treatment, the the progressive, chronic, fatal, the threefold insanity in step two, the fire higher in step two, um, the the obituary in step one. These assignments sent me into a paradigm shift. Like I started to see how unmanageable, not only unmanageable my life had become, but unmanageable my thoughts and my feelings, and um my even my spiritual beliefs, how warped they were in my upbringing, and how my perception and my perception was built upon a belief system that was all shame based. Do it or go to hell, do it or go to hell. And those were reinforced, and those beliefs were reinforced and taught through actions that others, or behaviors that others had toward me. And then my part from there was I did my part in reinforcing those moving forward by believing them. And I saw that truth through these step one, step two, step three assignments. And by the time step three, I was on step three, I was sold on TC. I was sold on connection. I heard for the first time connection's the opposite of addiction.
Hmm.
Um, and I believed it when I heard it. I heard it at the exact right time. A circle up at the end of the day. It was a summer evening. Somebody said it in a check-in, and I don't even know if they said it, but they like it hit me so hard because what was around me, I trusted. I had never in my life ever experienced a authentic um, notion of trust
Hmm.
as I experienced in that circle up that night. Um, that gave me the push right as I entered into step four to really get down and dirty with my harms, my resentments, my fears, and my misconduct sexually. Um, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote till I couldn't feel, think, or come up with anything else. Did a 6.5 hour step five with TJ Johnston on a Thursday night. Um, relived all of that, one of the most painful experience, but with willingness and hope and trust behind it. I'll never forget that fuel, man. The fuel, I was fueled by hope and trust, and essentially, like I know it now today as love,
Yeah.
support from the support of a power outside of myself that had my best interest in mind, and that was manifested through the brothers that I was in the house with, um, and the staff, and um, it was and as that was being revealed, that fueled me through step 4 and 5, looking at all of my pain, all of my patterns, what was causing it, where I was when I was a little kid, offered opportunities to look at that lost little boy that didn't know what he didn't know, right? Those are the kind of things that were components that were checked out in 4 and 5, and saw the defects, saw the patterns, looked at 6 and 7, and I've had a firm I had a firm grounding at that point. This is 5 weeks into the ranch. I had a firm grounding of at least a belief in a power that wasn't me. And that's all it was suggested I had to have. Um,
Hmm.
and so that worked for me. That's what I wrote about. That's who I wrote to. Um, I was able to set aside all of my grandiose thoughts and shame based belief systems. I was able to. It was suggested just set them aside. You don't have to let them go. Just set them aside and be open to something new.
Hmm.
Um, and I started to see substance in the power that loved me and cared about me, and that relationship began um, through the brotherhood. Um, and I saw the patterns, I saw the defects, and I offered them up to God for the first time. Got out of house, um, connected with a few brothers,
Did you go to
connect, and
aftercare?
I did. I
Good. Okay.
It was suggested by Russ Bird to go to 30 to 60 days of of sober living. And I was like, okay, I'll do 30 to 60. I'd done lots of sober livings. I didn't have any trust in the past ones, but I was sold on the brotherhood at this point, man. Like I was sold. I was like, I can do the brotherhood. Like I am a part of something. I'm welcomed. Um, my shit's getting called out all the time. It's super uncomfortable. But again, I had desperation behind that. I
Yeah.
had desperation first, and then the hope and the trust was there at the same time. These are dynamics I had never experienced, um,
Yeah.
that I was aware of. Um, and
Yeah. The unique thing about that brotherhood or a good therapeutic community is you can call someone out and you can be really um, intense with them, but the key is that you've earned the trust and you love each other, and so you know that there is a difference in calling out the disease and calling out the man.
yeah,
And but you have to earn that trust with each other, and when you do that and you go through 60 days of that with people. I've told people throughout the years, if you've walked out of treatment and you haven't developed relationships with the men you were in treatment, you've missed the point. The
Yeah.
CBT, the DBT, EMDR, like every acronym, TC, all that stuff is
Yeah. Yeah.
critical and important. But like you said, it's the opposite of addiction is connection, right? And that's where I think I see long-term recovery in people. And so you did the sober living, you did aftercare, and you
Yeah.
end up back in Idaho, huh? Or in
Yeah.
Idaho.
Yeah. So that cycle happened pretty abruptly. I was surrendered at that point to, so I thought, until it was really reinforced in PHP. I texted Jammer, said I was at a zero balance. I still have the text. I look at it every year. I'm at a zero balance. I have to work. I'm super hireable. I can work and go to treatment at the same time. But I need to get out of PHP so I can do this. And he said and he sent me back a message that said it's suggested that you finish PHP and then we'll talk about you working when you're done. But you need to finish PHP. That's all he said. And I thought about it, got super pissed off like for 15 minutes, and I sent him okay. And he sent me a pound sign, and onward I went to PHP. Took the suggestion, didn't miss one group, and got got a job right at the end of PHP and started working. Never missed a group through IOP. Took all the suggestions. I had a sponsor, Damian Hyatt. Right before I got out of house, I had him as a sponsor, and um, we got out, and we immediately um, he spread he took me under his wing and introduced me to the FTR community. He introduced me to the activities of the alumni community, sports like pickleball. Pickleball, I was very engaged. I didn't separate from the softball community. It was a perfect time of year for that. Every activity that the ranch had available, I was there, whether I hated it or not, because he said. I was told to take my sponsor's suggestion, no matter what it was. Gave me a set of dailies. He said to call him for 30 days. I did exactly that. I didn't withdraw from any of those suggestions. I had lots of unresolved conflicts going on, unresolved conflicts in obviously from my past, but then current conflicts that I created um, in sober living. But take the suggestions, keep it simple. Take the suggestions, keep
Yeah.
it simple, keep showing up. And along with that, what reinforced my belief system when I had doubts is individuals like Brian Eden, individuals like Jimmy Jagger, Tyson Dixon, Damian Hyatt. These individuals like had a life that I sought, and guess what? They had the same pain, they had the same
Mhm.
they had the same wreckage, they had the same codependence, they had the same religiosity in their family, they had the same messed up childhood that they blamed their entire life as well for all of their problems, same jacked up perception. Um, that they were raised with. But today they have a solution, and the way they did it was keep showing up and practice
Mhm.
humility through action, um, and staying constant in that. And I was promised my life was going to get better. It says that on page 83 in the big book. If I do the steps, continue to show up, stay honest for one day, stay honest, stay willing, stay open to new ideas, keep working steps. My life is going to change, but better than that, I am going to change. I
Mhm.
I heard that. I heard that in alumni from multiple sources, and I remember feeling it for the first time, um, and and just like being reinforced by these newfound beliefs that I was enough the way I was, and there's work to be done, and we can do it together.
Mhm. So
Um,
tell me what's your life like now? What
so that's
I know
so
you're
so
remarried.
yeah, so I actually got
I got I graduated in March of 21. Two
So
months after
what's your
graduation,
sobriety date?
my sobriety date is August 3rd of 2020.
Nice.
I just
Congratulations.
picked up my 3 years. Yep. Um, and yeah, I didn't get sober for 2 weeks in house. Detox. I relapsed in house, and on the opportunity to get sober, but or to get honest was provided, and I took it. And anyway, so um, what my life is like today is um, I came up in at the end of 21 to take a part in building a men's treatment center that modeled what saved my life. Um, and I was honored to be a part of that when asked right after graduation. So that's what brought me up to Rupert, Idaho, Burley, Idaho. Um, Same kind of small town that I was raised in, so I acclimated with the culture pretty quickly. Um, but I came up with a brand new perception of it's going to be hard, but what a concept. We can do
Mhm.
hard things together. The team that we came up here with, I trusted that they were working the same principles as I was, specifically Tyson Dixon, Andrew Etchell, a couple others that are no longer with us. Got the treatment center going, and through this process, um, met a girl, right? So that was also involved in the recovery community. That part of that community welcomed us into the community by by a connection dinner is what they called it. Met
Good.
there, started dating in of April of 2022. Um, so we've been together a little over a year and a half. We actually currently are not married, but the committed. I can keep a commitment today. I'm only three
Yeah.
years sober. I'm only 3 years sober, and I can keep a commitment today. I can have a hard conversation with her and still show up for her. I can still have a hard conversation with her, be pissed as all hell about where the conversation went, have my disagreements, and still make her coffee the next morning, or still, or still get up and start her car the next morning, and we can continue the conversation when appropriate. I don't have to run away because it's too hard.
Yeah.
I have connection with my 18-year-old daughter today. She's about to graduate from high school. I have a relationship with her mother. Her mother trusts me with her daughter's life. um, Went on vacation with my 18-year-old daughter last summer up in the Sawtooths, um, with and stayed in a cabin of coworkers that trusted me to with those keys, um, and was able to afford it because I saved up for it, and had that goal, and we made that happen, and able to sit in hard feelings with her through that vacation. Was able to listen to her cry, cried with her, talked a little bit about the past, was able to just sit there and listen. I can walk through hard conversations with my family, who is less than has healing available. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I can listen to their hardships without having to sponsor them. Is how Damien would put it. Um,
Yeah.
I
I think
can,
a lot of recovery is like we react differently. Life
yeah,
goes on and people are still people, but we don't. And I hear you mention a lot of angels, and I think God, all my angels have been human beings, in my
yeah,
life. And so it's and I think recovery really, there's a reason it starts with an RE, because there's recovery and rebirth and renewal, and
yeah,
well, that's kind of where Renaissance came from, actually. And so the ability to to really go back to a life that you were meant to live, and a life that you deserve, a life that you're worth it. And it's so great to see, men reconnecting with their family and their children. And because I bet 4 years ago you thought, there's no way, like, or 5 years ago, and your first wife would have probably thought the same thing. So,
Yeah.
people can change, and not just you changing, but people around you that start trusting you more and saying,
Yeah.
okay, this dude's for real this time. Because, sometimes we tend to not always tell the truth, or, I'll back that up. We have good intentions, and many times what we tell people we love is the truth, and at the time, and we just can't live up to it because of our addiction or because of our lack of whatever. And so,
Yeah.
so if you had to leave a thought with someone listening right now, what are the few things you do every day that you think are a big part of your sobriety? Keep it real simple. Like, what do you do every day that you don't miss, that, man, this is what grounds me, this is what ties me in?
So honesty, open-minded, and willing. Like I wake up
Love it.
every day with that with with a reflection of where I've been and where I am today, and how am I going to keep it? That's the question that I ask every day.
Awesome. Awesome.
And I read the daily reflections, and I have a belief system today that um, is reinforced by a spiritual bank account, I will call it, and that is a deep concern and love for the hopeless condition that, speaking to the newcomer, that guy that's just hopeless and broken right now, like that hopeless broken condition that has no direction and no
Mhm.
way out. um that's who I wake up to today,
Yeah.
and that's who I aim to share my story with, to reassure you that if it's available to me today, right
Mhm.
now, it's available to you. And um, the
It's that gift of desperation, as they say.
yeah, yeah,
I don't think any of us would have gotten sober had we just had no other options. I mean, at least that was my experience. And so,
yeah,
and as bleak as that feels, and as hopeless as that feels, my experience over the years has been people lose material crap, and they lose families, and they lose temporal things, but people really get sober when they lose hope and they hit spiritual bottoms.
yeah,
And that's when there's just no hope, and that desperation, and, well, I might as well stay because I don't have anywhere else to, like, as hopeless and crappy as that feels, it sometimes is necessary, and most times is necessary for stubborn people to
yeah,
change, like, okay, I'm done, like, but anyway, dude, we got to
yeah.
wrap it up, but I
Okay.
appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And I've had the honor of being around you for about 6, 8, 10 months. I didn't know you before then, but the light you bring into that center, and the hope you bring, and um, you just have this aura of humility and recovery in you that's contagious. And so thanks for, you know strapping up your boots every day. It's not an easy job. It's not
Yeah,
an easy position. You see people sometimes at their worst, and you have to. But it's just been an honor to get to know you and to watch you work, and to be around you the little bit I am once a month. And so thanks
yeah,
for sharing your story, and thanks for doing the work you're doing and fighting the fight.
yeah. So honored to be a part of it. Thank you for this opportunity, and I just hope, I have hope and prayer that it helps somebody, because I get purpose today. That's the greatest part about my life today, is that I wake up with purpose.
Yeah.
What a deal, man. Like, let's go.
Yeah, and
So,
I know it'll help somebody, but if it didn't, it helped you stay sober today.
let's go. Yeah. Yeah. I
Anyway,
haven't been
buddy,
sober so far anyways.
I sure love
Yeah.
you, and
Love
thanks
you,
for
H.
everything you do,
Thank you.
man.
Yep. See you, man.
Take care, bud.